You can't take him. It was an honest mistake.
Ma'am, step back now. You need to calm down.
My phone didn't just ring at 2 a.m. It screamed. That jagged, high-pitched vibration cut through the silence of my Chicago apartment like a serrated blade. I didn't even have to look at the screen to know who it was. Only 3 people in the world have the audacity to demand my attention at an hour meant for the dead. My mother, my father, and the ghost of the sister I used to be. Elena, please. My mother's voice was a wreckage of jagged sobs and practiced hysteria. It's Leo. He's in a holding cell in Mexico. There was an accident, a private clinic. They won't even give him water until we wire $15,000 for the administrative fees. They're saying he'll rot there, Elena. He's terrified. I sat up, the cooling air from the vent hitting my face, but I didn't feel the bite of the cold. I felt a familiar, clinical detachment. As a senior forensic auditor, I deal in cold hard facts, and my mother's voice was filled with too much theater and not enough data. 15,000. I asked, my voice flat, devoid of the panic she was fishing for. For an administrative fee? It's a ransom in all but name. My father barked in the background, his voice tight with that specific brand of righteous anger he used whenever the family's golden boy tripped over his own ego. No, I said. It was one syllable. Quiet. Final. Then I hung up and stared into the dark. The problem with family duty is that it's rarely a two-way street. In my house, it was a one-way highway paved with my redirected paychecks. Leo, my younger brother, was the serial entrepreneur. A title that sounds prestigious until you realize his startups were just expensive ways to set my money on fire. First, it was a luxury car detailing app that never launched, then a crypto mining hub in a rented warehouse that I ended up paying the back rent on just to avoid a lawsuit. He didn't have a career. He had a collection of failures funded by the Elena Bank. My mother was the architect of this system. She didn't use a hammer. She used a sigh. She could make a Sunday dinner feel like a deposition, weaving tales of Leo's potential, while eyeing the watch on my wrist as if it were stolen property. He just needs one break, Elena. You already have so much. To her, my 80-hour weeks at the firm weren't hard work. They were a family resource she was entitled to redistribute. I remember my mentor, Marcus, looking at my personal ledger during a late-night audit. He pointed to a recurring $2,000 transfer labeled Family Emergency. Elena, he said, his voice dropping that professional veneer. An emergency happens once. This is a subscription service. You're paying for the privilege of being exploited. He was right. According to my spreadsheet, I had invested $112,000 into Leo's life. My return on investment? A 2 a.m. phone call and a heart that was finally turning to stone. The silence that followed my no lasted exactly 3 hours. At 5 a.m. the digital siege began. It wasn't a private explosion. It was a public execution of my character. My sister Sarah, the lifestyle guru with 50,000 followers and a black belt in victimhood, posted a reel that went viral before I even reached for my coffee. My brother is dying in a cell. She sobbed into a ring light, her makeup perfectly smudged to imply a night of grief. And my sister Elena, the high-flying auditor, told us to let him rot. She's sitting on 6 figures while our family falls apart. Is this what success looks like? Cold-blooded greed. She didn't just tag me. She tagged my firm. She tagged our managing partners. By 8 a.m., my LinkedIn was a graveyard of professional insults. Disgrace to the industry, one comment read. How can we trust a woman with our finances when she won't even save her own blood? The old Elena would have been hyperventilating, drafting apologies, and reaching for her checkbook to buy back her reputation. But as I sat in my home office, watching the notifications flood in like a rising tide, I felt a chilling geometric clarity. They weren't just spending my money anymore. They were weaponizing my career to extort it. It was a digital shakedown disguised as a family tragedy. I didn't engage. I didn't comment. I simply opened a new folder on my desktop and labeled it Evidence. If they wanted a public trial, I was going to give them a discovery phase they would never survive. The actual call, the one that shattered the carefully constructed glass house of my family, didn't come from a frantic mother or a sobbing sister. It came at 4:15 p.m. from a Detective Miller with the Cook County Financial Crimes Unit. His voice was a flat, Midwestern monotone that carried more weight than 1,000 of my mother's screams. "Ms. Elena Vance? I'm calling regarding your brother, Leo," he began. I didn't stop typing my audit report. "Is he okay?" I asked, my voice a practice void. "The family says he's in a foreign clinic." There was a pause on the other end, the kind of silence that usually precedes a car crash. "Ma'am, your brother isn't in Mexico. He was taken into custody 3 hours ago at a luxury dealership in downtown Chicago. He's being charged with third-degree grand larceny and racketeering." The pen in my hand stayed still. "And the $15,000? That wasn't for a medical bill," Miller said, and I could hear him shifting papers. "That was the down payment on a fraudulent lease for a Lamborghini he tried to secure using a forged power of attorney. He didn't just use your name as a reference, Elena. He used your social security number to guarantee the debt. And your parents? They were listed as the co-signers who verified the emergency to the bank." The fog didn't just lift. It evaporated, leaving behind a landscape of pure, jagged betrayal. My parents hadn't been trying to save Leo's life. They had been trying to fund his final desperate scam, at the cost of my entire financial existence. The collapse was instantaneous. I didn't scream and I didn't cry. I simply did what I was trained to do. I followed the money. Within 2 hours, I had compiled a digital dossier of every emergency transfer, every forged signature, and every Venmo request Sarah had ever sent for networking events that were actually high-end spa days. I didn't send it to my parents. I sent it to Detective Miller and my firm's legal department. When my father called from a precinct landline, his voice was a ragged, desperate whisper. "Elena, they're saying we're accomplices. You have to tell them you authorized the signature. You have to save the house." "The house isn't mine to save, Dad," I said, looking out at the city lights. "You gambled my identity on a Lamborghini. Now you can explain that to a judge." I hung up and blocked the number. The fallout was absolute. Leo took a plea deal, 3 years for felony fraud. My parents lost the house to foreclosure after the bank discovered the extent of their credit manipulation. Sarah's influencer career died in a swarm of canceled hashtags once the police report went public. As for me, I moved. I changed my professional handle and scrubbed my digital footprint. The $112,000 was gone, a tuition fee for a lesson in survival. But as I sat in my new quiet home, the only sound I heard was the steady rhythmic beat of my own heart. I wasn't an ATM anymore. I was free.